Today we're gonna do a review of expressions, a little bit review, 5-10 minutes maybe, and then we're gonna get into input statements, and then we're gonna do a little bit of import, how to do an import, and then you'll have an in-class activity. So any questions, any concerns? Today we're gonna be doing 3 partners that work. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if you're able to see it. It's PyCharm. And every in-class assignment and every assignment that you're going to be turning in, make sure you have this up on top, your name, partner's name, assignment name, date, if possible, and then description, 1 line of your code. Like what is it supposed to do? Don't just copy the code and just paste it in here, because I can actually see the code, but write English description. Okay, so make sure you have this, and if you don't have this, starting today, you start gonna get 0 for your assignment. At least make sure you have these 3 up on top, and this date is not required, but you should have that in there. But make sure you have that in every anything that you turn in. I'm forced to give everybody 0 the first week because they didn't have partner's name, or the partner's name was something like Alexander, and they put Alex, and I have 2 or 3 Alexanders in my class. So I'm not sure which one. Make sure you have first and last name for your partner. So I can go off of that, and try not to use the nickname, try to use the name they have in Canvas. I asked them, what's your name in Canvas, so I can find them. Because it's not an in-person class, so I'm not familiar with a lot of you, and I don't even get to see you guys. So make sure you have your partner's full name. So now let's do the review. So what did we learn last time? We did expressions. So expressions, let's go over that. So we have x, and then we have 5 plus 3 divided by 2 divided by 2 times 4 minus 3. So what would you do first? Division and multiplication. Yes, we'll do division and multiplication, but in this case, remember, division and multiplication are all on the same level. So we have to do one at a time. So we would do 3/2 first. So we do 3/2. What is that? 3 divided by 2, 1.5 divided by 2 times 4 minus. So what would we do next? Division again, and we only have one division, so we can do 1.5 divided by 2. So 5 plus 1.5 divided by 2 is 0.75 times 4 minus 3. And what's 2 times 4? So we did 2 times 4. Did we do 2 times? Yeah. No. So if I'm making a mistake, let me know as well. So 0.75 times 4, which is 3 minus 3. And then we have addition and subtraction. They're on the same level. So what we can do is either way, if you do this first or this, we're going to get the same answer, but we'll stick to the rules. Rules are, we'll do 5 plus 3 first. Then we have 8 minus 3, and then we have 5 at the end. And if we print x, we actually get 5.0. So since we have had a decimal in there, and every time we have a decimal, a float value, this whole answer turns into a float. That's why we have 5.0. So if you, in the quiz, midterm, or final, if you just put 5, I'm not going to take off any point, but if the answer is 5.1 and you put 5, then I will take off some points. But if it's 5.0 and you just put 5, I won't take off any points. Just a review. So I'm going to take this off, and I do this. So what would print if I do x? What would print at this time? True. So it's an or statement. We have true or false. So we get true. If I change this to an and, I get false. So fall and means this has to be true and this has to be true in order for X to be true. All right. So if we have something like this, so we have false and false. So if you have false, if the compiler sees this as false, and it reads the the word and, it doesn't even goes in to check what this statement is going to be. It just sees this is false and it's an and, that means the whole statement is going to be false. So it returned false, and X becomes false, and it just prints that. So when we have an and, it just reads the first one. If this is true, then in that case, it's going to read what's after and. If it's the first one is false, then it doesn't even read the second part. So we have 2 less than 5, put it in parentheses. So the student said it makes a little more sense. And we have, so what would print now? Remember, this is an expression. This expression returns true or false. Then this expression return true or false. So people saying false or true. So let's go through it and see what's going to happen. So is 2, 2 is 2. Remember, this is asking in plain English. So this is going to be asking, is 2 less than 5? So the answer is going to be true or false. And this is asking, is 5 equals to 5? So what is that statement? What is line 4? True. So we have true here. And then what is the statement? Line 5. Remember, it's true because 5 equals to 5. So we have true on this side, and we have true on this side, and we have an and. So the X is going to be true. So all it does is this gets replaced with true or false, and this whole statement gets replaced with true or false. And let's go ahead and put, so now what would happen? So now we have different statements. I'm going to replace this with this. All right, what is it asking here? It's not asking the same question again. What's the question it's asking? So it's asking, is 5 less than or equal to, yeah, exactly. So is 5 less than or equal to? And here, what is it asking here? Is 5 not equal to 5? So something like this. So the answer, what is the answer for the first one? Remember, it's asking, is 5 less than or equals to? So we have a equals to, that means 5 equals to 5. So we have true. And then 5 does not equal, the second one is false. So we have false here, and then we have true on this side. So what would print here? I change that to or, what would print at this time? It'll print true. The reason it would print true is, remember, it's an or. One of them has to be true. One of them is true. That means this whole statement is going to be true. So let's move on to, if you look at, so after today, I'm just going to assume you guys know expressions, you know, less than, equal to, all these signs, or and statements, and everything about expressions. One thing, let's do one more review. Sorry, it's a simple one. So we have 2. Oops, all right, what would print if I do this? So what would print? 5 divided by 2. So what would be the answer? 2.5. So if I run it, I get 2.5. So what would happen if I have this? What would print now? I'll print 2. The reason it's printing 2 is because this is floor division. So floor division, what all it does is takes everything out of everything after the decimal. So we have 2.5, it takes out the 0.5. It takes the floor and returns the actual integer, not a what is it going to print now? One is correct. One is because we're dividing 5 divided by 2, but we're actually taking the remainder. what would print now? Yep, 0 is correct. Zero, what? No, I'm sorry, 2 is correct. It'll print 2. So I'll show you why it prints 2. I'm sorry, I got confused too. So we're doing 2 divided by 5. So we're always used to doing the other way around. We always have 5 inside and 2 outside, but this time if 2 divided by 5. So how many times 5 goes into 2? 0 times. Now 5 times 0 is 0, and the remainder is 2. So remember, you take the remainder. The remainder, the modulus thing, the more you learn about it, the more you practice, and you'll get good at it. So go home and practice and try to do it on paper like I did it on the screen, and try to figure out what the module is going to be for each number, and then you'll see the pattern. So after today, I'm just going to assume what you've learned so far. You guys know, because you guys are not asking questions. Let's move on to the assignment that's due this Sunday. On the assignment, it's asking you to turn in 4 files. So let me pull up the assignment. You able to see my canvas? So we have this right here, that's due this Sunday. And if you look at it, they're asking you to do 3 files. One is the main.py. The second one is problem1.py, problem2.py, problem3.py. You have to turn in all those 4 files. You may zip it up and turn it in, or you can just turn in 4 files. It lets you turn in multiple files. So if you don't want to zip it up, you can just turn in all those 4 files. So the way it's asking you to do an import is if you have multiple files, go back to PyCharm. If you have multiple files, let's say I have 4 files here. I have main file, which I'm working on. Then I have Haiku. Then I have test. Then I have Green River. Let's put some code in there. And we have print in Green River, and Haiku will print Haiku. And test would just print test. So now all these 3 files are printing something. Now, if you want to run all those 4 files all at the same time, what you can do is you can do import. You can do import test. Then we can do import Haiku, and then we can do import Green River. Now, if you just run the main file, all those 3 files would run. So pretty simple. You have multiple files. When you do import on a file, all you got to do is make sure they're on the same project. So if you create a file like an external library somewhere here and you're trying to do an import, sometimes it's not going to be able to find it. If they're in the same directory on your computer, that's when it'll be able to find it. So make sure when you create a file, you're going to be creating a file by going into right-clicking on the project, going new, and creating Python file. And you can just do and make sure there is no space when you're naming the file, because sometimes it's gonna have a hard time running the file when there's a space. We'll go over naming convention next week. Naming convention just says that you're not supposed to have any space when you're naming a variable or a class name. So this would be the class name. What you can do is you can just have one import statement, and you can import multiple classes like this. So if I run it, I get test. Then I get Thursday, then Haiku, and Green River. I can even take these out and import all in one line. So that's pretty simple. Yeah, import statements. I'm going to take it out. Let's work on, we did import, we'll do input statements. So input statements are when you're actually interacting with the student or a user, and you're going to be asking the user for an input. So the input statement works similar. Let's say you're asking the user for their name. So the way you're going to do it is input, or you can do print, what is your name, and then use the input function to ask the user what is it. So they'll be able to type it right here. But when they type it, you need to be able to catch it. You need to be able to store that in a variable. So if I run it now, the print statement runs, what is your name? And then afterwards, I have a input Remember, every time you run the program, it runs and stops automatically. Right now, it's running. Right now, it's not. It didn't stop. It's giving me an option to stop the program if I want to, because it's stuck on this function. It's waiting for the user to type something in. I'm going to type in my name, hit enter, and then the program stops. So when we get the name, what we can do is we can print the name to the screen. So if I run it now, I have Usman and then Usman prints. Every time you're working with users, you can't just print something to the screen. They wouldn't know what are you trying to do. So what we can do is we can format it a little bit. So we can do your name is something like this and pass it in separately. And if you run it now, remember still waiting for me to enter something. And it's gonna be your name is. So I'm asking the user for input and then I'm running this function called input. So what input does is it's asks the user for something. So it's waiting for me to enter it. So if I run it, it's stuck on line 6. It's stuck on line input right here. It didn't go in and print line 6 or 7. It's waiting for me to type it in. So I'm going to type it in. So that's me. The green is just me typing it in. So I hit enter. As soon as I hit enter, that name gets stored into my name. Usman gets stored into name. And then I just print it out. So the other way you can do it, you would need print statements if you're working with for loops or if statements. You can ask one time and you can have input function in a for loop. But the other way you could do it is take out the print statement and whatever you're asking the user, you can just type it in the input statement, just like this. So this would work the same way. So let's ask the user for a number and then we can display the number. What is your number or is this? And this one is going to be similar thing. We're asking user for a number and we're displaying that number. So far, so good. So now, if you wanted to do math on it, so let's do, we have to do x times 2. So your number times 2 is, so we're going to ask the user for a number. We're going to multiply it by 2, save it in the result, and we're going to display that result to the user. All right, so now I'm going to run it. It's going to ask the user, give me a number. That number is going to get stored here. And then we're going to times 2 and print it. So if I enter 5, what would be printed? So the reason we're getting 55 is input function. Every time the user enters something, doesn't matter if it's a number or a text, it takes it as a text. So it takes it as a string. So if you do something like this, print, how do we check which data type X is? What function did we use? Do you remember? Int would be like a casting you when you're trying to convert it, or you're trying to figure out which data type a variable. There's a function called type, right? We can just pass X in. It'll give us the which data type X in. So if you run it now, X is a string data type. So every number, anything we pass in, it goes in as string. So what's happening here, I'm gonna take this out. What's happening here is 5 gets plugged in here, and 5 times 2, it just multiplies the string. So string is 5, 5 times 2 is just 2 5s right next to each other. You can do this in Python. You cannot do this in any other language. So Python lets you multiply strings that many times. So I'm gonna run it again. And if I give it 1010, what it's going to do is just going to put 2 1010s right next to each other because I'm multiplying it by 2. If I have this 10, I'm going to have 1010 that many times. Not there. But yes. Yep. Wonderful. Questions, concerns? So, so there's no way to have actual come out to be 10. If there is a way to come out to be 10. What you can do is convert as soon as you receive it from the user, you just convert to int. If you know you're going to be working with numbers and the only thing the user going to be passing it, yeah, Rachel, you can just cast it to int, and this will convert to an integer. So I'm going to paste that statement in there again. I'm going to check the data type for it, and I'm going to run it again. So if I run 5, now it's an integer. Remember, we converted it and then restored it in X. And afterwards, we're checking which data type. So it's an integer. Then we get 10 this time. Any questions, concerns? So, so just put input normal. It doesn't know which. Yeah. So input always gives you a string. So that doesn't matter if you user types in a float. Doesn't matter user types in integer or a text. It always comes in as a string. So it's up to you to figure out what you need to do with that user input. You need to do math on it, then you need to convert it to appropriate value, float or integer. To convert it to float, you just do float like this. So you don't want to do everything on one line. It might be confusing for some people. What you can do is x equals 2, and you can just convert it. Take the input from the user, store it to x, and then you convert it to a float. We cast it to a float, and then you store it back to x. Now x is a number. So if I have that in there, you'll be able to see x is a float. Yeah, it's a class type float, and then I do your number times 2 is 10.0. Even though I put an integer in, I'm manually converting it to a float, so it's a 10.0. Oh yeah, so float, so remember the three data types. We have integer, we have float, and then we have string. Float is a decimal value. So any time integer is a whole number. So it's going to be 1, 2, 0, -1, that kind of thing. 10. Float is 1.1. Oops. And then we have 2.67 something. All these are float. And string is just a text. Yep. Any questions, concerns? So good so far. All right, so now we are doing, I'm going to take this out. I'm going to take this out. And let's ask a user for, let's see, we have did this, that. And let's do example we were doing Tuesday. I'm going to take all this out and take this out. So we're doing examples. We had Highline and Howland had some students. Then we had Green River had some students. Then we had Bellevue had some students, number of students. And then we had Tacoma. So we're going to be asking the user for how many students go to Highline. How can we do that? So we're going to be asking the user for how many students go to Highline. How can we do that? Use the input. So I'm going to do input. Just like this. And so would the user know what to type in? So would I be doing the same thing for Green River input? Yeah, so remember every time you're working with users, you have to treat them as they don't know what's going on. So they actually really don't know what's going on. So you have to provide instructions. So in your code, you know what the first input is going to be, go to Highline, but the user doesn't know. So you gotta have to type it in. So how many students attend attend Highline College? How many students attend Highline College? Something like this. So you got to ask the user for an input. I'm going to copy the same statement and I'm going to paste it in everybody else's. Instead of Highline, I'm going to change the name accordingly. And then we have Bellevue. And then we have Tacoma. So far, so good. So we have 4 input statements, and each input statement, whatever the user type in, will have a value stored into that variable. So if you run it now, we have how many students go to the Highline, 20, then how many Green River, 22, 15, 10, and nothing happens because we don't have any other code. If we wanted to see if we did it correctly, we can print it out. So Highline, Green River, Bellevue, and then we have we run it, 22, 20, 15, 44, and then we get those values down at the. Any questions, concerns? So far, so good. All right. So now if you wanted to take average of these students, how can we do that? Well, let's do the total number first. So we're going to be taking total. How can we add them up? So we can do Highline plus Green River plus Bellevue, Tacoma, and print the total. Would that work? So yeah, divide by 4 would be the average. Let's do total first and then we'll do the average after. Would this work? Yes, so if you run it right now, all these are string, remember? And we're concatenating string right next to each other. So you're gonna have something like this, but without spaces. Yeah, so you will get result right here down at the bottom, something like this. I'll actually show you. So we have 22, 15, 24, 50, and then all those numbers are concatenated together without the space. So you want to do math on it. So there are multiple ways I showed you. You can put you can cast it to integer here. You can cast it to an integer this way, Highline equals, and then Highline like this. Or if you don't want to do that, you can do it inline as well. So you can do something like this. So each one of them will be converted to integer, and then we can do math on it. But in memory, there's still strings. In memory, they'll still stay as string, but for just to do math on it, we'll be able to convert that to integer. So if you run it now, total line, yes, yep. Plus Tacoma. So it's not going to give us the right answer. It's going to give us the answer it was giving us before, the long number, putting everything right next to each other. But that number, the total will be converted to an int. So yeah, it's giving us that answer. What it's doing is, remember, you start with parentheses first. So it's doing concatenation first for all the string, and then converting that whole big number right there to an integer. And then, so let's say you, one more thing I wanted to show you, if you're running a code and you, let's say you figure out, oh, I need to go back and change the code and run it again. There's this red button, you can stop the program and it'll just exit the program. You can go back, edit it and run it again. Remember, it's running the program right now. It's waiting for me to enter something. So if you wanted to stop it, you can just press the red. So we have 22 making up all these numbers, and then we have this. Now what it's doing is converting each one of them to integer, then we can do math on it. Remember, every time you're trying to do math, you have to convert it before you can do math on it. So does the program crash? You change it while it's running? No, it does not. So Josh's question, if it's running it and you change something, let's change it here. And I keep doing something like this. So you have 2, 2, 2, 3, something like this. This updated code is not what it's running. It's running the old code. So if I hit enter, I'm going to get the old result. So the change that I just made, that didn't go into the program that was running. It doesn't crash or and it doesn't take the update right away. You have to stop it and run it again. All right, so let's do the average. Average equals 2. People said total divided by 4. We can remember we can do math on total now because this is an integer. Total is an integer. It's not a string. We converted each one of them to an integer. We did math on it and we stored it into a total. So total data type is an integer. So we can continue doing the math. So total divided by 4. That's going to be average, and we can just print the average. All right. So if you have 5, 5, 5, 5, the average would be. So what it's going to do is this is going to give you an error because you're trying to concatenate integer with a string, and that's not allowed in Python. I think we got errors like this, and the first day, second day, something like that. So let's show you 5, 5, 5, 5, and it gives you an error because you're trying to do concatenation, which is not supported in Python. So you do int and string, convert it, and total divided by 4, we get the average. And to make it nice for the user, we can just do average is something like this. And the user will know. Remember, this will give you a decimal value. So if these are students, so if you don't want to do decimals, you can always do floor division. And if you run it and we have weird numbers, odd numbers. So it's supposed to be 16 point something, then just give you 16. We don't, in Python or any other language, we don't have ceiling division, we only have floor division. But there is a function to get the ceiling for any number that you have. But we'll get into that a little later. But there are built-in functions you can do, but there are no division ceiling division, no. So remember, there are multiple ways you can convert it. So there's this right here. As soon as you take it from the user, convert it to int. The other way you can do it is Green River equals int Green River. So there are 3 ways you can do it. The first way, line 1, line 6, and then line 8. We do have in class assignment. So if you're not able to hear, make sure you're able to chat with your group partners and understand everything and talk to them through chat. So if you're not participating, you can participate through voice, which is on what I'm doing right now. Open your mic, or if you're not able to open your mic, make sure you're doing it with chat. And if I drop into one of your group and I don't see either of those, that means you're not participating. So I'll be forced to give you 0. All right, we'll talk about in class assignment after the break. So come back at 10:06, storing it to total.